In episode 4, we see that Cooper gets back to Dougie's home with Dougie's wife and child. We found out that he's been missing for 3 days, that he missed his son's birthday, and his wife is very, very upset until she finds out that he won all that money. And then she is incredibly relieved because they're going to be able to pay whoever they owe money to. And obviously, these people are very serious. They were going to kill Dougie because he owed them the money. Beyond this, what we get is Agent Cooper, Dougie, acting very infantile. Again, more signs that Agent Cooper was literally frozen like a statue while he was in the Black Lodge, leaving his mind in some kind of mushy state. This is reinforced even more when we see Agent Cooper pee, because it looks like he's peeing for the first time in 25 years. Well, let's not say looks like. The sound of relief that Cooper makes while he's peeing, yeah, it sounds like he held it in for 25 years. And he's also completely fascinated by the mirror on the wall. We then see him get really silly with Dougie's son because, again, he's got this childish-like mind. And for me, the best part of this whole scenario with Cooper being Dougie and coming back into the real world is he goes down for breakfast. He's so excited to put food in him, but then he gets his coffee. And we see him spit the coffee out with a huge smile on his face, and he's so excited to get coffee. Now, we remember from season 1 and 2 that Cooper is a coffee fanatic, and the whole spitting out is a mimic of a scene from the first season when Cooper tastes some coffee and spits it out, and you think, oh boy, he didn't like that coffee. But he actually did like it. It was just a little too hot. And even though it was too hot to swallow and he spits it out, he's still very happy that he has some good coffee. And that's what we see in this scene in the kitchen with Dougie and his son. It was a really, really great callback to who Cooper really is. It was just a great scene. I loved it. After receiving the phone call about Agent Cooper, Gordon immediately meets with another old character, Denise. So happy to see Denise back. I hope we get much more of her in the season. Him and Denise basically talk about the possibility of where Agent Cooper could have been. Shocked that they're finally hearing about him again. And at the end, they talk about that they both feel that they're onto something big. Eventually, Gordon, Albert, and Tammy get to see Doppelganger Cooper. And it is a weird interview. The weirdest part is Doppelganger Cooper seems unable to communicate normally. He almost seems to be communicating his cadence. Almost sounds like the people that talk in the Black Lodge. Not as severe as them, but he's definitely leaning more towards that. It was a very slow, monotone voice that he used. It was very strange. But beyond that, Doppelganger Cooper is like Mr. Innocent. He's acting like there's absolutely nothing wrong. I was just on my way to update you, Gordon, after 25 years. I didn't think that was a big deal. It's just all very odd. And none of this escapes Gordon, Albert, or Tammy. They're all very suspicious of Doppelganger Cooper and what he's been up to. We find out from Albert and Gordon who Agent Jeffries is. Now remember, Cooper reported into Agent Jeffries earlier when he was in the hotel with Daria, right after he kills Daria. He then tells Gordon that Jeffries is who he's been working undercover with. But when Gordon and Albert are outside talking about what just happened with Cooper, Albert lets Gordon know that Jeffries gave Doppelganger Cooper information about an FBI agent in Colombia. Albert says that he gave Jeffries the permission to share this information with Cooper, and a week later, this agent that Cooper was given the name of is killed. Albert feels very conflicted that he gave this information. He's very nervous about it. And the other really interesting part between Albert and Gordon, when they're having this talk outside about Cooper and Jeffries and exactly what's going on, they're both very confused. The only thing they're really able to come up with is Blue Rose. But at one point, Albert rubs his foot on the ground and it makes a scratchy sound. And Gordon has a big reaction to this. Ow, it hurts. I've got my hearing aid turned all the way up. But there was something about this sound. It's significant and probably something we should definitely take note of. The last thing we get from Gordon and Albert is, in order to determine what's going on with Cooper, there's one specific person they need to look at Cooper. They don't say who it is, but it's right after this that we cut back to the Bang Bang Bar leading us to believe that it's an old character from the town of Twin Peaks that they need to look at Cooper. We also got quite a bit of information on the town folks of Twin Peaks in part 4. Specifically, the most interesting with Bobby and Harry. We see that Harry isn't there. Sheriff Truman is no longer Harry. And we learn from Wally Brando that Harry is actually sick at this point in time, and apparently very sick, but we don't get any other details on it. So there's a new sheriff in town. He's very accepting of all the townsfolk and their odd quirks. We see this in the meeting where they tell him about the log lady's message and everything. We also see there's another officer in the room at this point. He's a new officer to us, and he gets disgusted at all this stuff. He gets disgusted that they're listening to a log lady. He can't stand the simple talk between Andy and Lucy, and Truman ends up asking him to leave the room because he doesn't want his attitude in there. So we do see that the new sheriff is just as embracing of the oddballs in the town as Harry was. But the most interesting part from the characters in Twin Peaks is Bobby. So we see that Bobby is a sheriff, and if you look at Bobby, he's not looking the greatest. He looks a little run down, a little stressed out. We first see Bobby when Truman is told about a high school student's death. Truman says, "I haven't seen the autopsy, but I'm willing to bet that this is more Chinese designer drugs," and then asks Bobby, "Have you picked up anything on your surveillance cameras from people coming down in Canada?" Because Truman believes that possibly these Chinese designer drugs are coming into Twin Peaks via Canada. So Bobby answers very quickly and insistently, "No, nothing. I've only picked up," and he mentioned some nature things. And he wants an absolute answer given to Truman, like he's saying, "Nope, Canada's not the place to look." But then Truman responds, "Well, I guess that's for the trails that you know about." So in other words, we see Truman kind of question Bobby's willingness to give an absolute no to Canada. Led me to believe that possibly Bobby's hiding something or doesn't want to find the actual truth. Or maybe he doesn't want to prove the actual truth. Maybe he knows what the truth is. He just doesn't want to prove it. After this, as they're in the office with Laura Palmer's picture on the table, Bobby walks in and becomes very upset about seeing Laura's photo. He has an emotional reaction. Is this sadness or guilt? Really hard for me to say. Based on Bobby's physical appearance in this episode, I'm going with guilt. So it's very interesting seeing Bobby as a police officer. I guess it sort of is what happens to people. A lot of times, real troublemaker kids end up being police officers. But it was odd seeing him as a police officer, and there's a possibility that there's a lot more going on with Bobby than we think right now. The last thing we get from Bobby is he gives us that bit of information about his father, Agent Garland Briggs, and Cooper, telling us that Cooper is the last person his father met with, and the day after Cooper and Agent Garland Briggs met, Agent Garland Briggs died at his station in a fire. We also know that Agent Cooper left Twin Peaks after this meeting with Agent Garland Briggs. So this meeting between Agent Garland Briggs and Cooper was obviously significant. Cooper left town and hasn't returned for 25 years, and Major Garland Briggs died in a fire the day after. So definitely be looking at Bobby in the future episodes. I think there's going to be a lot of information that we get out of him. Remember, Major Garland Briggs' whole story, there's a lot missing from that. It's very unlikely that he actually died in that fire. It's much more likely that he died just recently and that Doppelganger Cooper was involved in Garland's death. The last thing I want to mention on these two episodes are clues that were given to us, but I don't know if they mean anything. It was two different times. So we get a set of clues on the table when we first meet Gordon and Albert in the FBI headquarters that has to do with the congressman who viciously murdered his wife. The clues are crazy. Pliers, a jar of white beans, one photograph of a pinup model, another photograph of two everyday girls just laying in the sun. They're just crazy. I partly want to completely dismiss them. The reason why I don't is because later on we see the clues that they found in Doppelganger Cooper's car lined up on the table, on a table in the same way, and also just as odd as these other clues. It's a machine gun, a dog's leg, and cocaine. I'm going to definitely keep all these clues in mind. I do have a feeling they may end up coming together. And the congressman who viciously murdered his wife may actually tie into more of this story. Viciously murdered, that's what makes it really stick out in my head as a possible... I almost immediately connected it to the glass box murder because the man and woman that was murdered from the apparition in the glass box were viciously murdered. However, being that Tammy was involved in both cases and did not mention that, you know, they connected in any way whatsoever, that leads me to believe that no, there actually isn't any connection there, but we'll have to see. If you like the video, don't be afraid to give it a like. If you're just as excited as me about the upcoming episodes of Twin Peaks, go ahead, subscribe, click the bell, and you will be notified every time I upload a video on Twin Peaks. If you know anybody else who watches Twin Peaks, go ahead and share the video with them. It will give you something to talk about. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.